College admissions officers of Reddit. What is the most ridiculous thing a student has put on their application? Story 1. When I was young, my grandfather often took me hunting for peasants. He meant pheasants, to be fair. This was a Princeton application, so for all we know he might have also meant peasants. Edit heard this one from a rather unpleasant Princeton admissions officer. Maybe she stole the story from somewhere to scare high school seniors everywhere. Also, thanks for the gold. Story 2. One of my high school teachers used to read a newsletter that highlighted these type of things. My favorite one was this. For one, the essays the application asked. Ask yourself a question and then answer it. The student's response: do you play the tuba? No, he got accepted. Edit spelling. Story 3. When I applied to medical school, one of the application essays had a prompt that asked us what we would do if we did not get into medical school. I wrote that I would go to law school and become a lawyer specializing in prosecuting medical malpractice. I ended up getting an interview and had a good laugh about it with one of the interviewers. Did not get into that medical school. Story 4. Not an admissions officer, but a couple years ago, a girl sent in an application to my university in larger than normal packaging. Someone in the admissions office decided it was suspicious looking and might be a bomb. A section of campus got shut down and bomb squad got to use their fancy toys to figure out it was just a regular application that the girl attached lights to so her app would stand out. Story 5. A applicant literally wrote something along the lines of "Please don't accept me, I don't want to go to your school" in the addendum section of our application because his parents forced him to apply. Another time an applicant submitted an essay composed of Japanese characters that when put through Google Translate turned out to be a loosely translated version of Cat in the Hat. Story 6. I know a college admissions person, and one time they told me that a student wrote down that they can distinguish bra cup sizes by a simple glance at a woman. They were not impressed. Story 7. Law school admissions. We had a woman apply multiple times, but there was clearly something not mentally right with her. Our essay topic was basically why this law school. She started the essay verbatim minus the name omission. Who am I? I am Jane Doe. I want to go to law school and marry lawyer. She also said that she wanted to go to law school to work for her boss, Donald Trump. Barack Obama. It was clearly a recycled essay and she missed some of the updates. She also wrote about how she cured cancer, discovered how to regenerate amputated limbs with stem cells, and reversed gray hair back to its original color. She would also routinely send handwritten addendums to her application with more of her accomplishments to be added to her file. Her letters of recommendation included one from her pastor that said she used to regularly attend his church but she is no longer following the teachings of the church, so he cannot recommend her for anything in good conscience. A letter from her therapist who said with a large amount of one-on-one assistance she may be able to complete a law school level course. And the generic form letter responses you get when you write a letter to the president. She had a 132 LSAT score, lowest I've ever seen, so we never had to actually consider her, but I was actually pretty nervous she would show up eventually. Campus police knew who she was and got copies of all of her letters. I talked to another admissions counselor at a school across the country and she was doing the same thing to their office too. Whoa, this blew up. RIP my inbox. I should clarify that this was in no means meant to pick on someone with a mental illness. I only worked in admissions temporarily and actually now work in the mental health field. I know she's sick, and from the letter her therapist sent in, I think he really cares about her well-being, so I'm hoping she gets the help she deserves. She said some off-the-wall things, and it was ridiculous to see it in the setting I saw it in. I think it would be highly unethical to allow someone this ill into law school. The stress of law school can break emotionally stable people, so it would be cruel to subject her to that stress. It would also be unethical to allow her to take out a mountain of debt with no chance of graduating or passing the bar. Story 8. The worst CV I ever saw as part of an application to a graduate program was a barely intelligible, unformatted mess that included such bits of information as she likes to spend her free time reading, and her favorite book is 50 Shades Grey. Story 9. Not an admissions officer, but a high school classmate of mine was being forced to apply in-state by his parents. He had already been accepted out of state for EA. So naturally he took his beautifully written essays, put them through Google Translate a couple of times, then submitted the result. He got waitlisted. Edit EA early admission action. He had already been accepted into his dream out-of-state school and parents had agreed to pay for it IRC, so not really being an asshat there. Also the in-state school is quite prestigious, think top 30, so we were all mildly shocked amused to hear that he had gotten waitlisted. Story 10. I won't say how I know this person, but he answered an essay question asking what he would do if he had $100 by explaining he would go to the local playground where homeless people congregated and host a mini-Olympics where the homeless could compete for the 150 burgers he purchased with the money. The idea was to feed them but also do a study in human behaviors. This was for Johns Hopkins, and I'm pretty sure they were not pleased. Haha. Edit ha. I didn't really expect anyone to see this. To answer some repeated questions, it's not that $100 was a lot of money. It was more that JH wanted to see how you would spend a small amount of money for the greatest effect. Also, the burgers were that cheap because at the time BK was having a special on Tuesdays. The essay went into all the pricing to demonstrate frugality. And nope, this person didn't get in. I'm sure the essay is on their wall of shame now. Story 11. Wow, something I can answer. I have a few favorites and I'm on mobile, so sorry for formatting. For their GPA they put 95. One student listed their high school as IG, one student listed their intended major as teaching and their minor in principal. I asked one person how to spell their name and they had to ask their mother how to spell it. Multiple people have actually tried listing their IQ as a reason for admittance. If you get to write your own personal essay, do not write why, as the title and the entire essay be why not. Maybe not too ridiculous, but they stuck with me. Edit to clarify the application makes it apparent for your GPA on a 4-point scale. Story 12. At a law school I was considering attending, the admissions people told the story of a woman who had sent in a shoe with her application, along with a note that said, "Now I have a foot in the door." Story 13. My brother applied to a religious private school and one prompt was, "In what way has God encouraged you to pursue law?" His answer was NA. He got in, and used the scholarship to negotiate funding at the schools he wanted to go to. Story 14. Less ridiculous, but we had an applicant send in a book they wrote and published themselves. It was difficult for us to really read it, because for some reason the book really stank. We just put it in their file and shut the door. Story 15. Not a college admissions person, but I got into a great university, and about a year later a guy from my hometown messaged me asking if I could look over his application form. Now, I was over the moon because I was super proud of this guy for wanting to further himself, because I'd been worried he would fall into our town's trap of poverty and dying young. Now, I'm not saying I rewrote his application, but if what he gave me was the alphabet, then I gave him back the entire works of Shakespeare. Some highlights include when prompted to talk about what led him to seek out university qualifications, he answered something along the lines of, and this is grammatically exactly the same way he explained it. My mate went, and seemed like she had fun. I want to have fun but also get smarter. When asked to talk about any prior work experience or volunteering, he mentioned his time in McDonald's. Not bad, still a job, but he didn't go into much depth besides that and the time when he was younger and had to do community service for something. When you get to the part of the application where it asks why you want to attend that university, he literally said something along the lines of Google said it was good. Now, obviously I couldn't rewrite it perfectly because he would go to the interview and they'd tell someone else had done the work for him, but I tidied it up for him and I gave him a pep talk for the interview, and clearly they saw that he was a great guy just looking to further himself and he got in. Story 16. Rarely comment, but I feel compelled to tell this story even though it's slightly off topic. I intern in the admissions office at a decently prestigious private California university and overhear the counselors making decisions. They regularly shout stats across the office to get other people's input on whether or not to accept or deny applicants. There was one kid who was right on the edge of what we normally accept, the lower end of the spectrum. My boss shouted out his stats and got mixed responses. Then she said the infamous phrase, "I'll never forget, but guys, I Zillowed his house, it's $4 million in Los Angeles, they let him in." That was the determining factor for this kid's college career. I will never forget sitting there in horror listening to them joke about his wealth. I have so little respect for college admissions, at least at my school, and the administration after hearing that. Anyways, that's my yearly comment. Have a good night everyone. Graduate school admissions. Our application requires 4 separate essays. This student wrote all 4 as a long drawn-out love letter to one of our faculty members. The faculty member wasn't taking new students into the lab and had never met or talked to the prospective student. The student had taken all the info for her love letters from his website in addition to providing a list of his publications also from his website that she had read. I walked away from reading her application with zero sense of who she was, but having learned a lot more about the faculty member. Story 17. Under what else would you like us to know? I wrote about the birthday party I threw for my dog. At the end of that section I put, if I were an admissions officer, I would feel that this is relevant to the application, was shockingly accepted, edit dog tax. Story 18. My sister had to write an essay for a super Christian college she was applying to, and she wrote about the struggles she faced being atheist and got accepted. Story 19. Not an admissions officer, but I wrote a 750-word admissions essay describing the smell of baked potatoes, maybe not what they had in mind, but I got accepted and went on to attend that university. Story 20. My favorite email I ever received was a reply to an admission where all the kids said was, "Aye, we made it." I printed that out for my desk for sure. Story 21. Way too late for this post to be seen. I'm out of the business now. I finally got a real job, but I was the transfers guy in addition to regular freshmen. There are 2 cases that stick with me. The first was a phone call. A mom called and telling us her daughter should be let in with a 2-4. I was candid with her and told her it wasn't going to happen. She was well below our requirement. The mom started weeping, really honest weeping. I tried to calm her down some and asked her what this is all about. Parents generally just get pissed they don't give you the reaction this last gave me. She tells me she just found out she has late-stage brain cancer and she doesn't have anywhere for her daughter, and she hasn't told her yet. She had about 3 months, so basically just enough time to help her daughter move in for freshman move-in day. I had her send in some documents from her doctor and took it to the director and he made a special exception. We also made sure the girl had housing. It felt good to make a difference. Second case was a transfer who had a cumulative GPA of 178. I went to snap the denial off on that one before I saw the case had a pile of transcripts that hadn't been viewed. I popped up his star military transcript and it looked like he joined the Navy after flunking out of community college. There was boot camp, then buds within 3 months, then team lead, then pages and pages of blacked out lines. I made the argument to the director that the guy who had 10 pages of Speak Ops leadership was in no way going to flunk a college class, and that his transcripts be ignored and he treated as a fresh applicant. Director agree, and I got a call from Africa on a satellite phone the next day saying thank you. The dude showed up a couple weeks later to thank me in person and shake my hand. Edit. While my first gold, Thank you so much. I tried to do my best in my position. The job sucked, but I did feel like I made a solid difference more than once. Edit 2. Thank you for all the kind words. That's very generous of you all. I was just doing my job. Story 22. Every time this question comes up, there's always people complaining about kids who have something really petty for their hardship they overcame essay. But also they complain when kids writes those essays about how they've never really had a hardship to overcome. Story 23. I am a college soccer coach. I was at a college recruitment event. At these events they hand out profile booklets. In the section of interesting facts, one of the players' bios had an ad for a car that he was selling. Story 24. When I applied to college, the essay question was something like, what is your favorite place? I said the bathroom and spent the whole essay talking about how I love to take a. Story 25. Not a college admissions person, but my college counselor in high school used to be an admissions person at an Ivy. She showed us the best essay she ever read as an example for ours. The essay was the kid's first time trying alcohol. He was a straight A student spending a summer in Spain with a host family. They woke him up to take tequila shots for a cultural festival, and he had never drank before because grades were everything. His essay was about how he drank to be nice to his host family, and realized that there is way more to life than just school and tunnel vision. She said that almost every school he applied to contacted his high school to say it was the best one they ever read, and he got into 3 Ivas. Story 26. TLDR. Many prophets coming and proclaiming to be on mission from God to deliver new books of the Bible to my wife. My wife was an admissions counselor for a small well-known Bible college in downtown Chicago. She got tons of crazy applications. Quite a few came in from people proclaiming things like, "I'm the prophet Robert and I've been given a prophecy," and written them down. "I need this degree to get this added to the Bible." One particular time she was at work and it was towards the end of the day, so most had already gone home. Well, they had a walk-in prospective student come to the office and wanted to meet with an admissions counselor. My wife was the only one left for the day, so she went into a fairly small conference room to speak about any questions he might have about the school and how to go about the application process. This man was a middle-aged male who didn't look out of the ordinary. About 10 minutes into their meeting, this guy starts slowly going off the rails about his testimony life story, even though my wife never asked for it. He starts talking about how God had been giving him visions for years of things he needed to accomplish while on earth. Apparently a small Bible degree was one on a small list of things needed. My wife then sees through the window on the door behind the man a few public safety officers come in and speaking to the secretary. They then interrupt their meeting and the main off campus. Before he left a big pile of handwritten papers that were new books of the Bible that needed to be added. Apparently he was on their red flag list because he had done this many times for about 20 years, including making extreme death threats to their counselors for not letting him into the school, and once even attacked a student employee. This is one of a long list of crazies that contact her. She has a folder of crazy emails that were too hilarious to delete from this earth. Story 27. I forced my best friend to apply to a college he wasn't super interested in where I was applying. There was a section of the application where you describe your hobbies, past experience. He wrote walking as his first one with 17 years of experience and gravity as his employer. He got in. Story 28. Not an admissions officer, but had a friend who responded to the question, "Tell us about yourself," by drawing himself using lines and dashes on the computer and labeling parts of his face. He was accepted. Story 29. Oh, finally, I get to answer one. I received an 8-page of which page 5 contained the sentence, "But enough about myself" diatribe PhD application, which culminated in this sentence. I have aspirations to allow my research to impact the world, helping to eradicate poverty, neglect, health conditions, and possibly even on a global scale, with this PhD being the start to my life's work. If I were to aim big, I'd like to think I could go on to do amazing and wonderful things. I do not aspire for the accolades, but feel if I work hard enough I could achieve literally anything. Even a Nobel Peace Prize could be on the cards if I were allowed to just give my best. My dream is to be able to travel the world and teach people the importance of understanding a community as a whole, teach people how to put aside differences and grow as one united worldwide community, and of course, change the world for the better. I just need to have the opportunity to get it started. You skeptic, this project sounds promising. What is it about? Ideally, I would like to keep the project open and not focused on one specific geographical area, but feel I could definitely focus a lot of my knowledge on slums and areas with real problems with poverty and highlight issues around elitism versus extreme poverty. I would also focus on politics, religion, education, materialism, consumerism, and cultural norms, with the attempts of showing how issues within these can stop a community fully flourishing. I really do feel that this project could turn into a physical project and move forward with my own aspirations. I think I could focus more on the slums. If you feel this is an area that the university will support, I would be more than willing to visit various areas that have slums and try to learn more about the problems the people face and how they would want it to change. The man wanted to create a new blueprint for society. Edit spelling. Story 30. For a specialized master's program, working with children. While I have little experience with children, I believe my life experiences can help teach them, including my stint in prison and a brief stay in a mental hospital. Story 31. A guy with a very sketchy work history in property investment applied for a law degree. His application was based on relevant experience as he was subject of multiple, and some ongoing, lawsuits. It was mostly a rant about how he thought his lawyers were incompetent and he could do a much better job. He included a photo cropped out of a group shot at the bar. used many blocked quotes attributed to himself, including something along the lines of "I want to break down the barrier between success and spectacular success." Edit just remembered another one which included a list of key weaknesses, not key strengths. Key weaknesses included not working well with people. This was for MBA. Story 32. Not an admissions officer, but my work-study job was in the nursing department at my college. There were only 40 spaces each year, and there are certain minimum requirements that are stricter than my college. You needed a higher ACT score, and you have to be able to pass the same background checks as a nurse would. Otherwise, it would be impossible to complete your clinicals. It was my job to sort incoming applications into potential students, or straight to the filing cabinet in the attic. I had one applicant list their single-digit ACT composite score with the explanation that they were drunk and high the morning of the test. Another answered the "why do you want to be a nurse" question with how she planned to marry and divorce a few doctors until she became a millionaire. A guy wrote about becoming a nurse and helping girls while they were in the hospital so they could feel better. He also had a conviction for statutory rape that he disclosed and that he was gifted with his mouth and hands. A few weeks after he got his rejection letter, he showed up asking to speak with the department head. He was escorted out by campus police about 10 minutes because he wouldn't leave after offering to give the department head a personal demonstration of his nurse skills. Story 33. A question on my application was, what would you do if there was no chance of failing at doing that one thing? I responded I would do nothing, because without the chance of failure there's no happiness as success got in. Story 34. Oh, thank God. No one has posted about my application where I had a long paragraph dedicated to the leadership and communication skills I developed through playing World of Warcraft. Story 35. TLDR guy answers, how do you cope with stress with go up to a tall clock tower with a high caliber rifle? Not an admissions officer, but years ago an advisor told our grade ridiculous stories of previous students and what not to follow. One I remember was when one of his advisees, great a student but always late, never talked to him about his application. His dream school had low acceptance, but kid got legacy, turns an app denied, so the advisor called the school's admission office to see what happened. Turns out the kids answered the question of what do you do to cope with going up to a tall clock tower with a high caliber rifle as a joke. Story 36. Not an AO, but I did apply to a top 10 school for undergrad, and in the section that asks why our school, I said that I love intellectual rigor in my education and their higher than average suicide rate indicated a challenging environment. This was like my 12th application during an already busy semester. It was half joke, half SRS. Poor choice and a waste of $60. Story 37. Posts like these make me realize how different the educational system is over in the US. When I applied for college, all I did was chose my college from a drop-down menu, and then, if my average from high school was among the top X applicants, I got accepted. Story 38. In undergrad you needed a 3.5 to apply for the honors program. I applied with a 3.49 and wrote a bangin' essay about why they should accept the underdog. Couldn't believe when they called me to accept me into the program. JK, I never heard back. I did make it in life though, medical professional with a master here. Story 39. An opening statement that said, I know my application will get pushed aside because I'm not a Mexican-speaking illegal. I'm a white man and I am proud of my white American heritage. His entire essay was poorly written garbage, laced with tirades about how he was disgusted he was applying to an HSI Hispanic serving institution. Like, dude, go apply elsewhere. It also included another line about how his penis made him a target, but I can't remember it verbatim. Story 40. An admissions officer who came to our school once said that someone kept writing on a Stanford app Candy Stripper instead of Candy Striper. Also someone else said Lance Armstrong landed on the moon. Story 41. Probably mine. There was a space for why should we accept you. I was a brony at the time because my little sister was all over it. You don't judge me, and I wrote I am best pony and will bring many sunshine and sparkles to your school. I applied there as a joke, really just so I can get the rejection letter because this scholarship said you had to be rejected by at least one school. Somehow I got in. Story 42. A friend of mine really wanted to get into this prestigious university, but got rejected. I asked her what her essay was about. She said it was about her choice not to have a Facebook account. Yeah, not the most interesting or touching subject to write about. She got in the next year though. I was happy for her. Story 43. I don't think Eve's seen this answer yet, but parents who fill out their kids' app and then mistakenly put either their name, date of birth, or SSN on the student's app. Story 44. As a prof, not admissions, we are tasked with admissions for our doctoral program. One year, a student from a small school was applying, and mentioned his lack of research experience. This is an approximate quote, from memory. Despite the fact that my school lacks the facilities to support student research, I have spent the last year performing observational research on the effect of marijuana on motivation. I wonder who his subject was. Story 45. One of the guys on my music production degree, in his interview said something along the lines of I get really high, play something cool but I can never remember it when I'm sober, so I want to be able to record it. When asked why he wanted to do the course, he got in. Story 46. I don't quite remember the prompt, but for one essay I basically complained about the weather in Southern California and how it is always sunny and warm here. I got in and the admissions counselor hand wrote on my acceptance letter to come and experience the 4 seasons at their university. Story 47. Not an admissions officer, but I did write on my college essay that I wanted to be a vet and study animals because I built a nest with my siblings when I was younger. Was really surprised that it got me accepted to most of my colleges. Story 48. Some dude from Staples sent in how would I describe myself? 3 words: hardworking, alpha male, jackhammer, merciless, insatiable. He later went back into sales. Story 49. We do online interview with overseas applicants. One time there was a girl from China applying for our postgraduate program, and she looked completely different from the passport photo she sent us. We asked her questions like where she studied her bachelor degree. She gave us answer that wasn't consistent with the information on the application form. We can't confirm, but we believed she was working for some study abroad agency, and she recited the personal information of another client. Those are popular in China. Story 50. Applied to a college, and one question was tell us about your early life. My response was on a cold October night many years ago, a legend was born, and that legend was me, a wild spoon. Got accepted. Story 51. Okay, this is a sort of a tangent, but I wanted to share it anyway. When my dad was putting my older brother in preschool back in the year 2000, he tried to apply to a Catholic preschool, and one of the questions on the application was how does Jesus influence your daily life? My dad put he doesn't. My brother was not accepted into the school. They also said he lacked proper hand-eye coordination and would not fit in well with the other kids. Although this was after my dad submitted the application, so I call BS on that. 15 years later, he became a state champion pianist. Weird how stuff works out. Story 52. Well, the prompt was what is your favorite word and why? Their response was just 2 pages of the word. They got waitlisted, because they only half answered the prompt. Story 53. My girlfriend. God bless her, she's the most hard-working person I know, and super smart, but she can be so innocent and naive at times. She recently applied for a university overseas on a very competitive course, and I basically had to help her rewrite everything. There was a lot of silly stuff she wrote, but the one I remember the most was answering the question what do you think might be a hardship of studying in a foreign country? Her answer, well, I may want to go out and drink beer, which could cause me to miss classes, especially if I go to a concert or maybe drink too much and have a hangover. Oh babe, I love you but you are a dork. Story 54. Not a college admission officer, but my sister used to teach sociology in the most selective university in Paris, Hesse. Once, a guy sent her an email regarding his last work. It was bad, and obviously he knew it. So out of what the fuckery, he thought my shy and conservative sister would love to receive a mail along this. I know my work was not good, but if you give me a good grade, I could provide you with some sexy time. I'm quite well endowed down there. Then became more explicit. He also asked if she wanted some pics obviously. She reported to the administration that this guy should mind his manners. And security got informed and sent a clear message to the guy that he had to stay away from her and other women, but she didn't speak out about what he wrote. You'll try to find the message she got. It's buried on an old HD. Edit sent TLDR to the end of the post. TLDR student sent to my sister a proposal for sexy time, in exchange of a good grade on a bad work. Story 55. A man. Why am I always too late for these things? I work in the IT department of a quite prestigious business school, which means that everyone will try their hardest to get into a program. I once heard that an applicant had attached a picture of a street sign in Australia as proof of his experience abroad. He wasn't even included in the picture, it was literally just a picture of a road sign. Story 56. I work in international, so when anyone puts anything in the visa category question it's routed to me. Question: do you currently hold a US visa? No, MasterCard. Story 57. I talked about this with some friends the other week since we were graduating. One of my friends remembered they were in a super dark place when they wrote their application essay. Yeah, I talked about my parents' divorce and how I thought I was all alone. I felt like whoever read it either thought I was suicidal or just exaggerating. Story 58. I had a student write an essay about shitting their pants. It was a very suspenseful story right up to the moment of him soiling himself. This was in response to the writing prompt tell us about a time you experienced failure. Story 59. I used to be an undergraduate admissions representative, and we would host field trip tours all the time for high school students. We have a little guest prospective student card they fill out so after the tour we can connect them with a relevant advisor. Under the what is your interested major section, the number of kids that put football or basketball was insane. Under career interests, they'd of course put NBA or NFL player. This mostly came from schools within the Detroit Public School District, and these kids were clearly not being given sound advice at their school's result of underfunded, under-resourced, and lack of competent staff. The number of kids would get only interested in talking about football and basketball, thinking it was an actual degree, was really sad. My school didn't even have a football program either. These weren't little kids with big dreams either. These were 16 to 18-year-old kids who have already hit their athletic peaks. They were convinced they could major in sports and just go play professionally. Story 60. Not an admissions professional, but as a college faculty member I've heard some tales. 2 stories come to mind. 1. College notified a student that a component of the application final transcripts, I think was missing. She forwarded it, filled with expletives, to her mother who apparently had forgotten to ask that they be sent. Except she hit reply, not forward, admission denied, on the grounds that she shouldn't talk like that to her mother. 2. A student from China, now attending a school in the southern U.S., wanted to transfer again, to a school in New England. His application said that he had picked a U.S. school at random to avoid persecution for being gay in China, and realized that being gay in the Deep South was just as bad. The basic message was help, get me out of here, Also he was a math genius, admission granted. Story 61. Oh man, I was a student at the university working in the college admissions office and they had me sift through files. You best believe I saw a lot of ridiculous things, man. This is probably the funniest and most ridiculous thing I saw ever on there though. A kid's last name was Ruben and their first name was a condiment. Won't say it so I won't blow their total confidentiality. But oh my god, when I read it I laughed so hard the office was shook. But that wasn't the ridiculous thing, okay OMG. Inside their essay about why they should be accepted they begin it with yes my name is Ruben. And it is not a joke. And then they went on to explain why their mom called them that. It was by far the most ridiculously amazing thing to happen, haha. Story 62. When I was in high school, I had a 3.13.2 GPA. My plan was to apply to Harvard with the logic your average incoming GPA is 3.9. If you accept me, you can accept 10 more people who have a 4.0 and still maintain that average. Wouldn't that be great to have more 4.0 students? Thankfully my parents wouldn't let me send the application in. But, looking back, it might have provided a nice laugh for the admissions department. Story 63. Funny related-ish story. Went to an all-girls private school in North America. In 11th or 12th grade we had university representatives visiting the school to give presentations on their schools and why we should apply there. My teacher was presenting these reps visiting from one of the best colleges in Saudi Arabia, and at the end of her introduction she added quickly, and just to let you all know it is legal to beat and rape women in Saudi Arabia. There was a hilarious moment of shock silence when the stage went to the reps who were also women, but no one in my year applied their L. Story 64. I worked in admissions at a small Christian school. We had a file running in the office filled with copies personal info redacted obviously of our favorite essays. The ones that stick out are the peanuts and dung essay and the M16 essay. The first was from a kid who was clearly deeply religious, which is fine, but he talked about why he wanted to transfer from his community college by saying that trying to glean any useful knowledge from his secular professors was like trying to find peanuts in elephant dung. He also complained at length about the professor who wore a heavy metal shirt with a demon on it to class and how people like that were unfit to teach. The second was from an older guy who listed among his many accomplishments being a CIA agent in the 80s who was heavily involved in bringing down the Soviet Union and inventing the M16 rifle in the early 80s. The CIA claim is a bold move but at least kind of understandable if you're a sociopath. How could we ever actually disprove that? But the M16 one is truly hilarious. I'm not sure if he was unfamiliar with Google as a concept, or if he thought we'd be so wowed by his essay that we wouldn't do any fact-checking, but it took me a solid 30 seconds to confirm that the M16 was copyrighted in the late 50s by someone with a very different name. We also used to get a lot of personal photos. They weren't required for admission, but there was a pretty popular scholarship fund. Something like 90 of students were on this scholarship that required a photo. I don't want to give too many details, but let's just say it was very clear that it was a scholarship awarded based on how good a Christian you were. Some of them were just funny, like the folks who didn't want to spend the time or money getting a good physical photograph taken and printed, so they just attached a printout of their FB profile pic. There was also the guy who sent a picture of him posing with a cardboard cutout of Dale Earnhardt Jr. There were a few that creeped me out though. For more context, you couldn't apply until you've been admitted, and the application process for this scholarship involved a few phone or in-person conversations with your assigned admissions counselor. They were supposed to try and get to know these kids a little to make a character judgment, which is weird in itself. Inevitably, there were always a few girls who decided the best way to get more good Christian scholarship money from their male admissions counselor was to submit a picture of themselves scantily clad and in a suggestive pose. Many of these girls were still 17 when applying. The whole process made me feel gross.